So just about 3, 2, 1. We are live. Debrief. Just waiting on the pop-up. All right, gentlemen, we are live.
All right.
On the Debrief TV show. First of all, we want to say good night to everyone that is tuning in to the show. We really thank everyone for joining in with us, and we hope to have a very enlightening discussion on the Debrief TV show tonight. We have a very interesting panel, but as usual, we always like to say give us a couple minutes while we post the link for the show, and so we can share the link and everybody can be able to log on because there's a number of persons waiting on this show to go live. So just give us a second while I pull the link out and share with you guys. If you're now joining us, we just want to say good afternoon, good evening to you guys. I was getting this afternoon, evening thing wrong. Good evening to you guys. And so just give me 1 second, or give all of us 1 second. We just want to share with you the link, and then we're going to start from there. Okay, so let me put that there. I'm going to send you guys the link so you can send to, right? So yes, tonight is a special show as well that is being brought to you. We are actually looking at the 3-year anniversary of the Barbados Labour Party in government, and we want to look at the youth from the youth perspective. So that is why we have a special show tonight. I'm seeing a number coming in. All right, so we are live. I shared the link to you guys, so everyone has the link to send out. Again, sorry, we are just trying to share the link to everyone. I thought that was one of the hosts calling. Tyler, you're on a site. Yes, sir. That's good. Right. So let's start. So we are live on Facebook, and we welcome all your comments and your feedback as pertaining to tonight's show. We want to hear what's your perspective. What's your perspective on the Barbados Labour Party, where you think they are at as a party? How do you think that they are thinking? We really want to gear in on the youth tonight. So if there are any youth dropping in tonight, we want to hear you. Please send us your perspectives. Let us hear what you have to say, your concerns or your queries, and we want to have a very enlightening conversation with you tonight. On the panel, you have myself, Kimar Safri, as host. We also have Simon Allen as another host of the Debrief TV show. We have Kevin Henry, president of the Young Socialists for the Barbados Labour Party. We also have Khalil Koftiwala, youth advocate. And we also have Tyler. Tyler, I don't want to get in trouble for this name. Giasandi?
Grizandi, yes.
Grizandi,
Yeah.
sorry, my humble apology. On
Not a
with
problem.
us as well. And we're also going to be joined by at the later time by Kemar Stewart and also by Jeremy Beckford as soon as they are able to get in. I'm hearing some people saying that the volume is low. Please, can you just confirm if our volume is way better now? Tonight seems to be a low volume night.
Yeah, the volume
Akil
went
is
up.
saying it's better now. Okay, Akil, thank you. So yeah, so we just tried a different thing. But yes, gentlemen, welcome. We're here to discuss the 3-year anniversary of the Barbados Labour Party as a government. And yesterday we would have had Dr. George Bell. We would have had also Peter Wickham, both political scientists. We would have also had a partnership between us and Just Politics Worldview. So we would have had that very interesting and very enlightening conversation from that perspective, having two well-rounded political scientists discuss the show. But tonight we want to focus on the perspective of the youth and what are our thoughts on the government and what the government have managed to do in the last 3 years and going forward before there's an upcoming election, which is constitutionally due within 2 years. So we want to hear your views. We want to hear what you have to say. So good night, gentlemen. How, who want to start off? I should actually give this over to Mr. President to start off for us. What the government have done in the 2 years and how would you rate the government in the last 2 years?
Last 3 years.
3 years, my humble apologies.
You want me to do this in 1 minute, or you want me to just spend the whole?
Give me your overview. Since you're the president, give me your overview.
If you're talking about what the government has done, we could go through. I saw this pretend meme last night about what the cabinet and whatever folly people have out there now. But the reality is that we have a government that has accomplished so much in 3 years compared to what we've seen over the previous 10 years. It's a little bit remarkable that before we were spoiled for almost just the inclination of having a government who was capable in the first year. It was like a shot, a government who was capable of acting and actually getting on with working on behalf of the people and serving the people of Barbados. 3 years on, we are pretty much in a position where we've been challenged by a pandemic. We've been challenged by the economic situation, which is the first pandemic that we faced. Because, I mean, let's be real, the country was sick, it was ailing, our dollar was failing, and we were all sorts of threats from outside, and the government under the leadership of the Prime Minister was able to stabilize the country, put it on a firm grounding, and really allowed us to be able to be in a position to face the challenges that we face. So, I mean, we're not going to pretend it's not been a smooth road. It's not been a road that's been an easy one to travel, but what we have in leadership is a government that took the decisions that were necessary, that now allows us to be able to navigate these difficult circumstances. And I mean, let's be real, it's been difficult and still at this point, difficulties are not. I mean, remember the last government had the global recession, and that was the excuse for nothing being happening in this country. And we've had the local side effects of their ineptitude. Then we've had to deal with COVID once and twice, and then the volcano, but yet we still had and heard on Sunday 5.5 hours of results of just things going to improve the lives of Barbadians. And I think that pretty much says it. So it's fine for us to still, put ourselves at the feet of Barbadians, to be critiqued and to always improve and go forward. But at the same time, let's not kid ourselves. This has been a tremendous job in 3 years. It's surpassed legislatively what has happened in the previous 10. And if we have to compare apples, then we can be satisfied with the job's been done thus far.
Yeah, I think definitely to jump in here after Kevin, he's outlined everything in terms of the challenges that the Barbados Labour Party has had to face in the last 3 years. And I think really and truly, when I think about those 3 years, I think of it as an entire arc of challenge that the party has had to face as a government. Kevin talked about the economic collapse, the specter of economic collapse that we were facing in 2018. We had to deal with, as a country, the unconscionable actions of the international institutions in terms of blacklisting and that impact on international business. And we all know we've had to deal with COVID, and not only COVID, but more than COVID itself, all of the impacts that attend the pandemic. And on top of that, the government has had to face obstructionists, they've had to face saboteurs in some instances. And at the same time, you have this record of achievement and accomplishment in the face of it. You have buses are still on the street every single day, and more than buses on the street, there are more buses on the street to transport working class people across this country. People don't complain about the garbage collection in this country anymore because garbage trucks were bought. The sewage situation was fixed in record time. You have trust loans being given to many young people. Many of the recipients have been young people, allowing them to be able to start businesses. And you say all of this achievement at a time of perilous economic circumstances. But as the Prime Minister always says, government is about choices. And I think that then the Barbados Labour Party government has shown that when you prioritize, when you make certain choices, then you put yourself in a position to be able to best serve the record of service that I think the Barbados Labour Party can stand on in the last 3 years. There are challenges, no doubt, and there will continue to be challenges. But the fact is that I think any objective observer of reality can say that in the last 3 years, they have shown that they are at all times equal to the task. And so no matter the challenge that confronts us, the government working along with the people of this country hand in hand can face down that challenge.
Tyler, you want to jump in
Yeah.
as well?
No problem. So everything that's been said sounds wonderful and amazing. But I think reality is the factor right now. And reality being the factor right now, this is not, you cannot go into a house without a foundation being built and a structural system being built. What we're facing right now under this Barbados Labour Party government is basically, in a nutshell, the lack of passing the integrity legislation that creates transparency and accountability to certain departments and ministers, especially NCC. And in the beginning of the Barbados Labour Party victory, there's something called White Oak system, and then that is tied into Gridlock that recently filed for bankruptcy too as well. These are just a couple departments that I highlighted so the viewers can go and research and have a understanding as to what is occurring, because the taxpayers' money is at stake at this present time. And we have something called debt inheritance. And that is something that is ridiculous in my eyesight. And we have a government that is borrowing money and blaming it on 10 years previous governance, which is, I think, is childish. It's like telling my parents that, you know what, my younger brother or my older brother is who is responsible for this. And when it comes to the reality of the streets, I spend my time in the streets. I don't do social media. I for basically equality. And as for Chatman Lane, the Orleans, St. Michael West, Vietnam, Blackwater, places within my constituency as well, I think they will have a different view in terms of the goodness of this government, because the taxation, as I recall, we turned to the third highest petrol cost in the world, and we fail to realize that inflation starts from the port. So as long as inflation starts from the port, the minority in this country that makes up the majority are who are going to face these challenges. I'm not here to take sides with no political structural system. I'm here to give a vision and a view as to what is really occurring. Because in 1994, when Owen Otto in his administration, by the way, he is my mentor, he taught me. May he rest in peace. I'm now finished everything that he's taught, and it's time to come out. And when he got into office, I believe that was the first sale of the first percentage of our national bank. So if we look at the contributing factor up to now, we will see what the Trinidadians had accomplished. And I know personal individuals who are Barbadian that has finances that could have bought shares and could have been a part of the system. But being the authoritarian government that we are having at this previous time, it was not acceptable. So that is my view. I am not here to sound pretty, to make anyone feel that their side is better. is a contributing factor of both D and B, and we need to get rid of both of them. Enough is enough.
Fair enough. I have. All right, so yeah, so thank you very much for yours. Jermaine is now joining us as well. Welcome, Jermaine. So we heard the opening remarks from everyone as it pertains to where they are at and their feelings towards how the Barbados Labour Party government have been going. And again, it's a youth perspective, and we want from different angles what persons have to say, what person's belief is. Simon, Arlene, persons want to know, is Taylor candidate for any political party? You want to clear that? Are you a candidate for any political party?
Oh, okay. At this present moment, I'm a member of the Barbados Integrity Movement, BIM, and due to some of the technical issues and social issues and stuff, we have to resort to our life. And I took up the mantle myself because I believe that I'm not going to stop here, because I live in the streets and I am not partisan, but I will support a system that is for the people and was built inclusive. So to answer that question directly, no, I'm not, but I'm raising the Barbados Integrity Movement with youth leadership and involvement. And I run by the principle called Benjamin Franklin once said, tell me and I may forget, teach me, I will remember, but involve me and I'll learn. So that's my principle in my system that I'm running, and I will be running for the next election.
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. You want to say something? I see you back in your lips.
Well, no, Taylor was he was a lot. I had to write down quite a bit. I mean, the show started, so I moved as well. Into it. First thing he would have mentioned, I mean, there's a lot that he would have mentioned, but the first thing he would have mentioned, I said that the foundation is something that's necessary. And I think one of the first things we would have identified was the foundation of ensuring that we had a country that could have functioned, a country that could have afforded its way through. Now, I'm going to say first that the Barbados Integrity Movement serves a very critical role, and I think civic institutions like that need to be given more space to be able to contribute, to give a lot of people opportunities to engage in the discourse of governance. But I think we also have a responsibility to make sure that we do it in a pretty close to factual way, in a secure way, because to suggest that there's an issue with what occurred because he identified NCC and YO, and that the lack of the passing of integrity legislation would have addressed or caused us to be any weak format, is particularly a fake pass to just throw things like that out there. The minister addressed the issue around the NCC and raised quite clearly that public tender was issued for that, particularly if he's responding to the issue with the bins. A public tender went out, and that from the public tender, only one company that would have tendered made the would have gone past that process. That's been publicly stated, and the date that was published was also shared. And then we would also want to speak to YO. Now, I mean, fortunately for Barbados, we've had YO, and there was a lot of discussion about YO back then in 2018 when we were first engaged. But regardless of what our opinions are on if we could have gotten it for this quarter or next, we engage people with a track record of delivering, because that is what just a common sense thing to do. And fortunately for Barbados, it happened before COVID, and it puts us in a position that after dealing with this for 18 months, that not a single civil servant has lost their job, not a single bus has been pulled off the road, not a single garbage truck has been stopped. The government has been able to purchase more water tankers. If you go to some motors today, you will see the 4 out there in the lawns. The government has still been able to function. There are 5,000 families on the adopted family program who, without any access to employment or whatever, get it, and more so. And that's because of the work that would have happened early in the situations. We could argue if it could be done different or better, but we are here today, and the results of that, paying that fee and working with that particular company, shows that we're still able to exist today. So I mean, there's a lot of things he would have put out, and access, equality. I mean, we could go into the whole concept of equality and the government policy. everything that a lot of things that this government has done, it was it last week, really provided opportunities for every single Barbadian at the end of the day. Maybe we have to do more work to retrain people how to take advantage of the opportunities that are available to them. Maybe we have to do a lot more digging down and making sure that people understand that, you know, my life don't have to go in this one path. There could be these different paths. I help people really figure out what it is and what's meant to them. And there are probably ways that we could do things better, which we are always open to. As no professing to be perfect, but I don't think that we're trying to build some unequal and just leaving this body behind is I think we could discuss policy. I think we could discuss a way forward without trying to make people feel driving into think that people out here trotting over them on purpose with the intent of keeping them in some corner, because that's just not it. And it's certainly not the BLP's way. And again, in the article I wrote, we have a history. And the beauty about history is that it divorces from opinion, and it really allows us to rely on facts, on things that have actually occurred. How many families went from packing up houses to owning land in the 80s with this party? Owning land allowed people then to be able to mortgage, be able to then use the land as collateral and other things. And then all of a sudden you had a booming middle class by the 90s. You go and look at things in the way it went through. So this party has never been those people that everybody like to profess. And maybe we don't say it loud enough, and we don't say it strong enough and share that history. But I feel we can discuss how we can make things better, particularly in the city communities, urban areas, for everybody, without making it seem like if any one of the two political parties that are the main ones are only interested in keeping people in a state of sufferation and that. I think that's unfair, to be very honest.
All right.
Thank you. Go ahead, Simon, and then let me get.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in here. What I wanted to say, what I've recognized over time is that for many people, perception is reality. And we've seen right now in society, not just in Barbados, but across the world, there's a lot of mistrust in government, a lot of conspiracy theories, a lot of views that people hold about what the motive of government is, why government does stuff, and so on. And it's very careful. We have to be very careful that we don't allow ourselves to be jaded, especially by overseas media, to make us believe that we have a government that is not of the people and for the people. That's the first thing. It is also important to recognize too that the government has to serve all classes in society. The government can't be a totally working class, representing only working class people, middle class people, or business or upper class people. The government has that hard task of trying to meet the needs of every group, every interest group, every sector within Barbados. So it's very important then that if we are discussing the performance of government, it has to be looked at holistically. There are many programs that benefit middle class Bajans, working class Bajans, but I think that the real problem that some people have is accessing and knowing where to go and knowing who to access or how to, the process of going about doing things. That's the challenge. We saw recently that the government with their whole project with housing and so on, that Bajans are being asked to come forward if they're interested in getting a unit or land or whatever. And the challenge is that sometimes people still don't know what the processes are. And one of the good things about this administration, I mentioned this on the program last night, that communication, we cannot say that this government is not good at communication. Compared to what we had before, it is clear that this government is able to communicate effectively with the public. But what we would want is that we would want people to be able to access those opportunities, access the opportunities, go to the national housing, see what is going on, ask questions, submit the necessary documents so that you can be eligible. Because one of the things about it too is that sometimes people say, well, you know what? Government is doing something, but ain't involved me. But the question is, do you meet the criteria? Because for assistance or to get something, you always have to meet certain criteria. So once you understand what the criteria is and you can provide what is necessary, you can access it. So I think then probably one of the challenges that the government may face is more public awareness, more public communication to let people know, well, hey, look, this is the process. If you're doing this, this is the steps you have to take. So I think going forward, that's one of the things to be considered.
Thank you. Right. So, all right, I'm bringing Kimani next topic. Then. So okay. So we're going to look at it. Let's say we break down how we've seen the performance in various ministries or various areas. We would have seen on Sunday night, the ministers would have come forward and given their report on, and I don't know how much persons watch it, but I always encourage people to watch things from the D side and the B side so that you get to understand what is going on. I don't play that, you don't want to listen to the B because there's a D and versus and vice versa. It's always good to have that perspective. From listening to the report, for those who would have listened to the report from the various ministers, and if you want, you can go onto the Barbados Labour Party page in your time and listen if you haven't. What are your perspective? So if we can break down a few key ministries. Now, one of the hot one I would like to start with is COVID. How is the handling of COVID by this administration? And if you want to go as far as if the other administration was in, how we would, or what state we would be in. Now, we probably got through pandemic in some cases, but what are your perspective as the government handling of the pandemic, and also include that with the health sector? What have you seen in the health sector? And I could agree with Minister Bosick when he said in his speech, he says, don't see him or his ministry for just handling COVID, but see it for what the health sector has done. So again, 2 minutes with each of you guys. I'll start with Khalil and then go across to Kevon based on how my screen is set up. What are your perspective on how the government handled COVID, and also what have your perspective on how the Ministry of Health is doing? And then we go across 2 minutes to give your insight on that.
So thank you, Kima. I think that many people, the majority of people in this country, can agree that the handling of the COVID pandemic, where across the world we have seen challenges. We have had our own challenges here, particularly this year in our second wave. But the near consensus in the country, I think rightly so, is that the government of Barbados has done a sterling job in managing the COVID pandemic, and more than that, the fallout from the pandemic. We saw last year a relatively small number of cases. We had a trickle through the whole year. They were able to contain it at that time. And at the end of the day, we have to be frank with ourselves and realize that in December, December set us up for December 31st, ultimately in our second wave in January. And the government was then able to wrestle COVID to the ground in record time. We went for a hard lockdown of sorts, or rather a pause in February that got the situation under control. And we're now at 25 cases per 100,000, which is the international benchmark. And so in cases where we look across the world, countries have struggled over a long period of time with their management of COVID in terms of the cases themselves. That has not been the experience here. We had that spike, no doubt about it, and we were able to contain that spike in a matter of months, really and truly. You saw what happened at the prison. We had that outbreak at the prison, and by perhaps March or April, that outbreak was contained. And so moving on from COVID, I think that the story of the Jeffrey Bostic-led Ministry of Health is really the story of the entire Barbados Labour Party government. COVID is the largest issue, perhaps, that many people think that that ministry has had to face. But you heard him speak for 15 or 20 minutes on Sunday, and he had to speak very little about COVID because he had a long list of accomplishments to give in that speech. And when he spoke about the improvements that are being done in the Accident and Emergency Department, or what is being done with polyclinics and the outpatient clinics across the healthcare system in this country, ultimately, it is once again another commitment that the Barbados Labour Party has to working class people. And so that really and truly, in terms of the handling of COVID and health in general, I think there's still more to be done in terms of health and wellness and that sort of thing. But so far, based on the situation that we have faced, I would give it an A+ grade.
Thank you very much. Just for the viewer, where is the representative from the other parties? I just want to set the records clear that we did invite the Democratic Labour Party youth arm, and we were so gracefully declined. So just know we did not just choose from the Barbados Labour Party, but we invited all parties that had a youth arm to represent. So just letting the viewers know that they did not come on the show. For some reason, they may be fighting for Jeremy Beckford. But but go ahead, Kevon. Let me hear your perspective on the health. Sorry, yes, Mr. Jeremy Stephen, is a bummer. That was a bummer.
Yeah. Khalil touched on a lot of points there. We could speak to COVID and how that's been managed. I mean, to be fair, there's no perfect way to manage COVID. I think everybody went through the learning exercise of it over the year across, I guess, pretty much every country in the world. It's unfortunate that it has cost lives here at home at some point. And I guess we extend our condolences and sympathies to everybody impacted. I've known a couple of the victims here. And I know we've lost in our family an uncle over in the UK to it as well. So I think it's something that has impacted people to a lot of different levels. And I think one of the things going forward, and it is what happens next, what happens tomorrow is that going forward, that every day while we strive to get back to normalcy and, we depend on vaccines and, we're been fortunate enough to be able to access a substantial number of vaccines at this stage when there's some countries in the world still not even registering 1% of their population. At least we have a greater, in 2021, a greater recognition of how we, particularly from a personal perspective, should be able to conduct ourselves to mitigate against the effects of COVID. But as Khalid said, a healthcare story for this government, for developing this term, goes beyond just COVID. I mean, it is the work when we drive past the hospital, you see the expansion in the A&E and ongoing. The building has been completed and now is to go through, I guess what they go through, there's a word they call it nagging, when they probably will look at the floor plan, whatever they could do it, but they're going through pretty much the process of outfitting and getting it prepared to be able to take on patients in short order. Again, who goes to the A&E on a regular basis? Again, that's usually people, the polyclinics now operate. There's many of them with extended hours, and Mr. Scott for sure is 24 hours. And there's the aim to get 24 hours again in St. John, I think is in Spicestone as well. So there's a push on to ensure that the access to these services, to the words that we don't like to use, but people would say ordinary man, or to the people who don't have access to things. But what we would like to say, we'd like to ensure that the services that Barbadians pay for, that they can have access to them when they need them. And ultimately, that's the healthcare story. The hospital had issues with waiting time and access to beds. You heard the Prime Minister recently spoke to signing different agreements to look to get St. Joseph Hospital back up and running within short order, which will provide another avenue. So it's a story that you see the district hospitals as well being refurbished from St. Lucie. You see the clinics in St. Joseph and in St. Andrew as well being reopened. So again, it is providing the services that people pay for, ensuring that they have access to them. Can the service delivery continuously be improved? Of course it could be. I think companies who deliver services quickly and will always tweak to ensure that they could get it done quicker, better, faster, and the government shouldn't be any different from that. It's best practice. So I don't think there's anybody who thinks there's a perfect system yet, but we're making improvements in healthcare. And I think ultimately people who ordinarily might not be able to afford. And I think people need to remember that healthcare is one thing that can bankrupt any person. So people often complain about things like maybe our cost of living, and our taxes. But at the end of the day, if you show to the hospital and you get diagnosed with cancer, you can be treated back to a healthy patient without pulling your pocket. In most other countries, you're going to have to make a determination of whether to mortgage your home or whether to pay for healthcare. And ultimately here, we're not making those decisions at this point. So we just have to continue working to ensure that the services people want can be delivered and ensuring that each Bajan has access to the best quality care where possible.
Thank you. Kim Armstrong, let me get you in here on your take on the health and what is going on.
COVID-19.
COVID-19 and how the government handled it. You're still muted. Go ahead.
Yes, good night, everyone. I'm sorry to be late. I had a bit of emergency. But joining the conversation, I just want to respond firstly to some comments that were made earlier. I do not know British Barbados, Mr. Kafdawala would have been living in, but I certainly can say that the government deserves an A plus for its management of COVID. Um, quite frankly, if he is honest with himself, like I said, you can't say that the government deserves an A because the government would have made some very critical errors in the management of the COVID. First, I think the whole management, the whole Bani and Panani saga with exposure to the bus call, I think that that was a disaster. And quite frankly, if you are honest, I think the government would have exacerbated that situation way more than it should have. Even as it relates to how the situation with the prison officers were managed, you were hearing different stories coming out of the situation with the prison officer. The prison officers are suffering serious public embarrassment from how the situation would have been managed. Um, Also, we like I said, for the first time, the overall Barbadian public had to manage and grapple with a very deadly situation in COVID. So we had to manage between a public health crisis and an economic crisis. So in COVID, many people were staying home. The government tried to respond by deploying specific stimulus packages. You had the NIS fund paying out some type of assistance to try to keep people from falling so low behind the cracks, which is commendable. I applaud that. We had the situation, the debt situation now where we had um, one of the minister's progress report, she spoke about the reserves, but those reserves were simply borrowed funds, which we have to pay back. And if in, being frank, the situation in terms of the debt repayments, the interest payment, what the government did was to amortize the process, which would have only transferred interest payments to a couple of years down the road, but still not taking them away. So they kick the can down the road in that regard, and that's a situation where we will have to face coming up. Um, Also, as the tourism product begins to disappear from under our nose, we need to find a way to um, make foreign exchange as soon as possible. So I am not saying.
Kim, are we speaking on the health part first? We haven't.
Right. I can cut back in. I can cut back in to make it into 20 health into what I am saying.
Okay.
So, like I said, in trying to balance the economics of it, ensuring that the country don't go totally bankrupt, there was still a lot of mistakes in rolling out the protocols, especially a lot of people crying about the drawback on the Sunday lockdowns, and they had some restrictions that just didn't make any sense. Like the gas station was allowed to sell top ups and gas, but nothing at all from the daily, and you would have persons complaining about how disadvantageous the protocols were for them, how inconvenient they were. So I think things could have been done different, but when it comes to the overall management, I think that the government did fairly okay in terms of managing the process, but there were some critical errors, as I said, and we're here now, so I'm thankful, but there's still some responsibility that the government has to take as it relates to how the whole situation was managed.
Thank you. Jermaine, you want to jump in here?
Yeah,
We'll give everybody 2 minutes to respond to a question so that we can
well.
get to the other questions as well, okay?
Well, they said the other person stepped 5 and 6 minutes, so you think, hey,
You take 2 minutes. Don't worry what people think.
All right, I actually want to start with this quote by Curtis Armstrong. Without a plan, there is no attack. Without attack, there is no victory. The reality is this: the Barbados Labour Party came into government 3 years ago. We in this country we were facing myriad economic and social challenges. From what I saw, and I speak as someone from the sidelines, I think Miss Motley and the team immediately went to work. And as we would have known from during the campaigning period, there were issues which were mission critical. And the government to date has sought to address those issues. Now, there are some, however, which I think have not been addressed as properly as they could have been. The most poignant of them would be crime and the water issues in Barbados. Other than that, to date, I can say that the administration is doing a very good job. There is no real complaints on me from that. When you look at the COVID-19 pandemic, I mean, as I think I heard Kimar Stewart said, no one could have predicted that. Is Kimar Stewart or Kevin Henry thing? I said no one could have predicted that we would be impacted by such a deadly virus in our lifetime. And I mean, let us be real. Where other countries have faltered, Barbados has done well. Now, we could all argue about the dynamics, the optics, what we could have done better or what we could not have done better. But in the long run, what is most important is that Barbados has been able thus far to weather the storm. One, and persons in this country, unlike in India and some other countries where we see persons starting to die in mass, Barbadians are living today. We have some serious challenges, however, and I have to highlight them. The most poignant of those being the current unemployment challenges, which are facing a lot of people in Barbados, including myself. All right, and
Don't forget we dealing with health too. Don't forget we're dealing with health.
I know we're dealing with health, but I'm going to link it all in to say that the government of Barbados, I think the government had a very bold and progressive agenda when it came to the revolutionization of the healthcare sector in this country. However, COVID has more or less come and turned everything upside down. Bearing that in mind, I want to make this observation because while some persons would say that the government of Barbados, well, Kimar Stewart said, you said good, right, Kimar?
He said fairly good, I think.
Right, he said fairly good. Mr. Kofiwala said he gave it a star rating. I would say I would give the government of Barbados a 75% rating for the handling the COVID-19 pandemic. My challenge is, and I have to say this because whilst I can talk about the good, I also have to speak about the negative. In life, if you're a risk management professional, you take risk and you seek to turn risk into value. My challenge is that I don't think that the government of Barbados has truly taken risk and turned all the risk into value. It is still early days yet. So let me just say that we have a lot of time to see the metal that Ms. Motley and her cabinet is truly made of. Right? However, I find we are continuing a lot the same. We are trying to buttress systems which were already outdated, and we are trying to make those systems look good. So it is as if there's a saying in economics where we are taking good money and pell after bad money, which inevitably that good money will become bad money too. All right. Now, if we to really have a change in this system, society, and everything, we have to be prepared to make some bold, progressive, and revolutionary choices. We have to be prepared to break some barriers, even break some eggs, hurt some feelings, and do what we have to do because it is what is necessary to build this country. Now, we are on a youth program this evening. Yesterday evening was the adult program. All the persons that were on your show yesterday are either collecting pension or getting ready to collect pension, with the exception of two, all right, of the guests. The reality is, when we talk about youth, we're talking about us here, and I'm talking about my little son that is 4 years old. The systems and the things that we have in place in Barbados today, inclusive of the upgrading of the E&E department, it is not those things that will truly take this country forward and make this country into a better country for my son that is 4 years old that is coming up. And in saying that, I want to say to you that I have full confidence in the Mayor Motley-led administration to start the process and drive the change. However, we must recognize that we have to build up future leaders for tomorrow. And if there's one thing that I would say in this program,
Jeremy, please.
hold on, let me finish, Kimar. If there's one thing that I would say in this program tonight, is that I think whilst we are doing a pretty good job of investing in Barbados and Barbadians, I think that the government has to do a renewed effort to invest in the youth of this country. Because if we do not, we will find that all of the gains that we have made will not benefit the next generation.
All right, thank you. Let me get Tyler in on your perspective on the health, and then we close with Simon on this particular part of the area. Gentlemen, again, reminder, please take 2 minutes the more so we can move on to other topics. As well, stick to the topics, and then we will get to other things. For if you have other closing statements, stick to the topic, please, so that we can move on to other topics, because it's not a small panel. Go ahead, Tyler.
All right, thank you. I don't know where to begin to explain what the situation in reality really is, but who feels it knows it. And if we are rating individuals and governments and countries on this pandemic, we are at some level of insanity, because this thing is not for no rating. Lives are being lost, and I don't subscribe to this rating system that you're having. So I'm not going to give them any rating as to what they are and what they are not. What I can say is that the government moving forward with this situation has tremendously destroyed what they already did before, because I have a friend that is 94. His name is Mr. Cumberbatch. Well, he's no longer with us. Mr. Cumberbatch has taught me that he grew up in an era where there were standards. And then a government came in and created a psychological twist in classism. So we had an introduction of lower class, middle class, and upper class. And given this pandemic at this present moment, they're kicking the middle down, and they're at the top, and they're looking down at the bottom. And this pandemic has been that stone to move. And how can you say you're dealing with a situation when the foundation of the situation is going to create a financial catastrophe? Yes, we have a medical perspective. We need to get our country intact. But my question is, why is the obligation, when COVID-19 came out, why was the obligation tourism and not close the airports? We're going to have a debate on finances and systems and so forth. It doesn't make any sense to me. The wealth is the health of this country. And it's also the individuals who are leading this system of COVID. They have to remember that they are individuals who have placed them there. And these individuals that have placed them there are going through a lot. So if you're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, you need to understand that the rules and regulations that they put in place and continuously put in place has been to stagnate the ghetto people. And you can see the frustration, because if a man knows English, all he's going to speak is English. If a man knows violence, all he's going to speak is violence. And dealing with a pandemic is not just dealing with the COVID-19 situation alone. It's mental. It's not just medicinal. So my thing is that let's have a conversation not on favoritism, because I realize the Barbados Labour Party associates and members, like, they're in love with publicity rather than humanity. Because I can't tell when was the last day I actually saw some individuals that I used to see on a regular basis when I was with the Barbados Labour Party. Tyrell Lovell can justify it as well. I mean, what are we doing? Are we looking for publicity, or are we dealing with humanity? How is Chapman Lane being assisted? How is the Orleans being assisted? How is Michael West? How is Waterhall Land? These are places that are densely populated, and people are frustrated, are very frustrated. So yes, we are looking at the medical aspect of it, But as long as God is above us, we will prevail. But what we cannot prevail from is psychological manipulating from early childhood because of a pandemic and using um, debt inheritance as a reason as to why we're going through what we're going through. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, for your views on the whole COVID situation. I want to move quickly on to tourism as it pertains to your views and your thoughts as it relates to the Barbados handling of COVID. Of the in tourism. Obviously, we've heard the slogan. Well, you can include that in your conversation if you want. But the whole thing is that we've heard that, first of all, we're talking about slogan that tourism is our business, which is also not just a slogan, but also a reality. That it is our business, is what is our bread and butter. It is what we live on. It represents majority of the income. I know we have Jeremy Stephen here watching, and Jeremy just keep commented, but he got me cracking up by saying thing. But but he's giving some good points as well. So let me start with Simon, and let me get your guys' view. Simon, sorry, my humblest apology as well. Put in your point on the COVID as well, if you want to marry the two, and give me your points on tourism and what you think that going back to the COVID. Remember, we're looking at the 3 years in office. So what I want you guys, if you could focus on, is yes, you could go on what they did right or wrong, but also look at the fact that the reports also speak about the future plans. So if you had checked it, you could see it as well. Go ahead, Simon.
Right. With regards to COVID,
Well, let the
I
mic to you,
mean,
Simon. You're little.
yeah, I can bring it a little closer.
Yeah.
Any better? Right.
Yes,
I
please.
think with regards to COVID, you know, governments had to learn as they were actually doing. So there's always this lag between what is happening and your response. But I think that at least now in 2021, we have a better understanding of how to manage COVID. And we also are encouraging people to take personal responsibility. Government has a responsibility. Yes, it does, but it's still up to individuals, because if we want to see the country open up more, it can't be a situation that when we have the government gives us at least the opportunity to go out and do what we have to do, we're overdoing it, and then the numbers go back up. So we still have to take personal responsibility. People still got to wear the mask. People still have to sanitize. You walk around Bridgetown, people still wearing the mask on the head, some wearing the mask under the neck. I don't know. So we have to take personal responsibility. Yes, it is important that the government, of course, protects its citizens. That's why it's been doing the education about vaccination. On another part, now people were saying, well, should I take the vaccine? Should I not take the vaccine? It doesn't cure COVID, whatever. But any kind of preventative measure to reduce the spread of COVID, that's the thing. The vaccine is supposed to protect you to a degree where it would help you if you had to get COVID, that the symptoms would not be as severe, and would also try to reduce the likelihood of you transmitting COVID to somebody else. So that's my views on COVID. I think that there's a lot more personal responsibility that has to be taken. Now, maybe look at tourism. Let's be real. Barbados is a tourism dependent economy. So just like all the rest of small island developing states in the Caribbean, that took a big hit in tourism. We know that because the hotels were closed, lots of people were unemployed, and it shows to us how dependent we are on tourism. Not just only the direct employees of hotels, but also the auxiliary services, all the supporting services, those who have hired cars, those who provide cleaning services, those who do provide security. If you don't have guests and there's not occupancy in hotels, it affects everyone. What about the craft person, the person that makes the craft, the person that braids the hair, the water sports operators? So we have to realize that tourism is entrenched in the Barbadian economy. And I know people like to come and say, oh, now is the time to diversify the economy. How are you going to do that? Let's be real. Because if we look at it, tourism of itself is still a diversified product, because so many people work within the tourism sector directly and indirectly. So we got to understand that while we're saying yes, diversified economy, the diversification of any economy in any country takes lots of years. All right. We've seen some, well, I guess we will talk about renewable energy at another date, but I think that because of the negative impact on tourism, it has really slowed down the revenue the country was taking in. As a result, what the government was able to do before in terms of all the projects and all the assistance it was trying to give to people, you might see a reduction in that. So what's the aim? The aim then is to reopen the country and to those tourists who are vaccinated and responsible to come to Barbados, because we still have a good tourism product, and to make sure that those persons working in the tourism sector are able to protect themselves from getting COVID.
Okay, thank you, Simon. I just want to get some of the comments that are in. Jeremy Stephen again, this is not true, Simon. Tourist over dependency is not tourism dependency. Barbados was the most over dependent. I'm just trying to get some other thing. Let's just trying to get some more of these. I mean, these are conversation chats, so I'm just trying to get some of the most salient points. Our economy suffered greatly because of selfish decisions is another one coming from Jason Greenwich. Minimum wage up to take off or want to blinkers, and then that's another thing there. Mahmoud Tata, who's a very avid listener. During COVID, roads still get due, buildings refurbished, helping hand to self-employed, and helping the needy, and all of that. Guys, if you want me to read these comments, you're waiting in short hand and got me up and down, right? Jeremy with another one. You see the angle Simon going with about diversification. People been calling for it since 2007. It's over 14 years. 2 business cycles later, Singapore and Maldives switch there for every 10 years. They need to do it nimble. All right. Let me also.
So Germany is confirming that the diversification economy should have been done under the last administration or started.
Well, I guess that's what he's.
Economy in 3 years, right? Let me know, Jeremy. Jeremy, that's let me.
Jeremy, go. You're hearing him respond there, Kevon. Let me get you.
Yeah.
Let me get you back in 2 minutes with the whole tourism, and then we go around the table again to get in everything. Jason is saying tourism in a pandemic field. Agriculture is a real future of these times. Again, these are he says under the bees. Simon, he's saying under the bees, not under the bees. Go ahead, Kevon. Let me hear your views on the tourism, where you see it.
Yeah. Again, I think tourism is one of those topics again where I think we all got to understand that there's going to be no V-shaped recovery in the tourism industry. So there's going to be a time where we got to readjust and wait. I think most people are optimistic for what this winter season will look like. And I guess like every other Barbadian, we are quietly optimistic that that's going to be positive and it's going to be a safe tourist season that allows people to come, but at the same time allow us to remain safe. So it'll be interesting to just see how that works out and the protocols that we put in place. I, for one, will not pretend to speak on behalf of the TMI and those in the tourism industry in terms of the field, but we have to realize the critical importance that tourism plays in terms of our overall, how interconnected our economy is to tourism. There have been arguments for a while for diversification, and I think nobody would ever deny that that is a key. I know we had a heavy focus on services and the challenges that that's faced with instruments from the OECD and now the UK, now that they're not part of the EU as well. So I think while we figure out while we navigate that space and figure out how we diversify, we still have to make sure that we can eat. And once we have to look at what's our main income earner. I remember back in the early 80s, 90s, there was this heavy emphasis to get out to the cane fields and how far we ran from sugar at that point in time and how we did from agriculture to see that we're now going back. Instead of diversifying agriculture at that point, we were more interested in just not being in the fields. We have to be careful not to make the similar mistake at this point. Tourism has a significant impact on, as Simon said, on many, many sectors. I know like my brother worked in pharmaceuticals before, and the tourist season meant that they had sufficient sales in sunblock and in cough and flu medicine that necessarily expanded what they would then for their profit for that period. And that works across pretty much every single sector. So somebody who might be sitting down in a distribution office and argue they don't understand the impact, the focus on tourism, not realizing that additional bodies on the ground mean additional people to consume goods, and it works the same way for agriculture. Hotels not working means that poultry farmers would ultimately be forced to produce less this year because they can't project to have additional 500,000 to 750,000 people in Barbados and provide goods and services for them as well. When tourism comes back, do we need to make sure that there is better integration between, let's say, agriculture sector and the hotels, ensuring that that produce going into them can be met and that farmers have a stronger hand in the services that come up? Of course, and I think you see the Ministry of Agriculture working to increase the amount of food produced on the country, understanding that it is not necessarily how to get rid of tourism or how to get away from tourism, but how can we make everybody else stronger because of tourism and because it brings bodies on the ground, it brings an increase a population that allows our market space to have people to consume goods that we grow, things that we sell. Simon mentioned the craft producers. I worked in shipping before, and I know we used to had one company that outside of the tourist cruise industry, the cruise season, used to bring it 2 or 3, one line used to bring it 2 or 3 TUEs a week. And once it was tourist season from October onward, they would do 80. Is that sort of volume, understanding how it impacts so many different sectors, is that to understand and appreciate and respect, but it's to make sure that we get it done better than we did it before. How do you protect the worker? How do you protect businesses that feed into it? How do you ensure that you reduce how people take a lot of money offshore and don't necessarily allow it to feed back into the local spaces? So I think it's best is to understand how to, like with most things, how to come back better from COVID. We heard the Prime Minister speak to this. We heard the Ministry of Agriculture speak to it. And certainly you heard them use terms all the time, like an all of government approach. And I think tourism is no different. And there's that approach that would ensure that, you know, at the end of the day, all Barbadians will benefit from it.
Thank you. Wayne Hoy is asking Kevon if it sounds like Kevon was listening to the agriculture program this morning. So somebody said thumbs up. Let me get Kimar's perspective before we jump over to Coffee Waller. Kimar, what's your perspective on that? And then we go over to Coffee Waller. Then we go to Jeremy.
Yeah. So tourism.
Sorry, just let me get in, Jeremy. Jeremy is my resident. Economist on the chat. He says hotels do not buy that much local ARI. Francis Chandler, God rest his soul, dispelled the notion that the hotels support significantly. They're talking says jumping significantly the local sector up to just before she died, actually 4 years ago or so. I mean that if that were the case, the increases actually output from non-sugar agriculture would not have happened over the last year with tourism falling. So
yeah, I mean, to be fair, Kimura, that could be true, but I just spoke in a future context, understanding, and maybe we could speak to farmers now, and a lot of them would understand that maybe hotels themselves previously did not engage in that sort of production, but restaurants, and when people go into different areas, you know, and if you go into some areas, you know, people who sell, they would tell you that without people, the additional people, the volume is different. So it may not necessarily just be the mega businesses in the hotels, but it could be the small person who are cussing again, the tourists, and like Wendy's and the other places when you go in and you're watching football, and you just go in there, and it's the all tourists sometimes. So it could be all down the chain. And again, going forward, the things that you keep speaking to, you want to be able to do better than how it was done before.
Fair enough. I'll go ahead, Kimar.
Yeah. As we all know, the tourism product was decimated. You had a situation where the hotels were being used as quarantine centers for the government. Kevon says something about protecting workers, but if I could recall, the government passed the severance legislation, the sunset legislation, which would have disadvantaged a lot of hotel workers not being able to receive the severance as appropriate. And we still have a lot of hotel workers right now at Accra and at the Hilton who still have not received any severance from that time. So if we also look at like the welcome stamp, I like the welcome stamp idea. I think the welcome stamp was a good initiative. I think more can be done from that perspective in terms of tourism. So it would definitely give applause from that perspective. But I think tourism has some very structural problems which we don't address, which span across both administrations, and we need to tackle these issues. I would point to the $300 million investment under the best program. I was always I'm all for uh, investment in tourism, but in reality, I think $300 was being a little bit gracious towards the hotel sector, as the investment was mainly for repairing old infrastructure and trying to help persons retain employment to some extent. But I don't think that the government achieved the goal that they set out to achieve in trying to pump the money into the hotels. As we all know, Barbados is a very expensive destination. It's becoming more and more expensive to travel to Barbados, and we have to look at that. The cost to get here is a problem. The cost to eat here is a problem, and then we have hotels offering all-inclusive packages, which stops money from really trickling into the overall economy. So most of the money is still concentrated within the sector and hardly ever benefits the Barbadian economy other than a job. And a common practice that I see going on in the hotel sector, and we could see it with the recent ad in the paper by a prominent hotel, which wanted the assistant food and beverage director bring him in for applying to the chief immigration officer for a permit. There are thousands and thousands of unemployed persons who could fit the bill. So, like I said, bringing workers from abroad has been a common practice even before COVID, and government needs to work to try to stamp that out. And wrapping up, the sector still has a lot of taxes on it, as was implemented by the government when it first came in place. So again, making the product more anti-competitive. VAT went up on the sector from 7.5% to 10%. The increase in property taxes, even the increase in water rates, even the increase in gas and the like. So, like I say, we have to tackle these chronic issues, which would give visitors the better and more cheaper experience, as there are destinations in other parts of the world that are more cheaper and offer way better products. So, if we want to be serious about tourism, we have to definitely diversify the product offering.
Thank you. Jeremy is saying that that he's going off right now, and he's happy to see David Thompson Jr. online in future PN. He will be. I think he will. I don't. I try to. Jeremy,
Who he talking about?
Who you referring? Referring by looks or by speech. Go ahead, Coffee Waller. Just let me get your views on the tourism, and then we go over to Bedford, and then I think Simon would have touched on tourism, right, Simon?
I touched on tourism.
Right. So we will go on another. He mean Coffee Waller, or he actually mean Coffee Waller.
Of course.
As a junior David Thompson. Go ahead, Mr. Coffee Waller.
And not much to say on tourism. You've had an extensive discussion on it, but suffice it to say that it is important to contextualize it. Excuse me, and I think that quite a few of the ones who've spoken before me have done so in terms of the impact on economies of similar size and similar orientation in terms of tourism dependent economies. And so that the what we have faced in Barbados is not at all peculiar. And the issues that we know exist in tourism far predate the Barbados Labour Party, this iteration of the Barbados Labour Party government. And I don't think that we must let a crisis go to waste. And so COVID has proved beyond a shadow of a doubt to us a lot of things that we've been saying for many years in terms of the diversification, that's a valid point, making the industry more resilient to shocks, that kind of thing. And it allows us now the opportunity to so do. And we wouldn't have had the impetus to do it beforehand. And I think then that the government must look towards, and I have no doubt that the Ministry of Tourism is looking towards, many of the things that have been spoken about. I agree with Kimar to the extent that we need to look at the supply side of tourism in terms of increasing competitiveness of our tourism product. in relation to others, looking into niche markets in tourism, understanding that, as Kevin said, the recovery won't be V-shaped, because when it comes to tourism demand, a large part of it is beyond our control. It is about what's happening in our source markets, and we can see what's happening in our source markets. And so it is a complicated situation. And to the extent that we have seen already the government committing to something like the Barbados Employment and Sustainability, Sustainable Transformation Plan, the BEST program, programs such as that need to be improved upon to allow us to be able to pivot our tourism industry for when when tourism does return. And those are all valid conversations and legitimate points of inquiry that we can explore. And as I say, I have no doubt that is being done at the present moment.
Thank you very much. Jermaine, let me get your views on tourism. Please, let me stick to the 2 minutes as well, so we can.
And Tyler too. I don't think Tyler.
No, I'm going to go Taylor next. I haven't forgotten.
Yeah,
Thanks. Yes.
Okay.
Please.
So I want to say that both Kimar and Mr. Kopdwala, both of you and Simon made some points I wanted to make. However, what I will add to it, and this is something which is most concerning for me. So Barbados, one of the bigger sources of employment in Barbados would be obviously the tourism industry. However, when you look at the tax revenue and the earnings from the tourism industry, it is almost on par with the international business sector and some of the sectors in Barbados. It is also concerning to me that we have a lot of hotels. We have some very large hotels in Barbados that do not pay as much taxes in Barbados as some smaller hotels which are domiciled, which operate outside of Barbados, but they domicile their entities within Barbados and pay taxes in Barbados. I think Kimar, you mentioned the fact about the hotel, which is now hiring a food and beverage manager. The honest truth is, and I'm going to say something that a lot of people say when they're in the industry, but a lot of us who try to be hosts and all diplomatic and want to enter politics, we refuse to say. The tourism industry that we have today, in some parts, is just a replication for the slave plantation that was around in 1838. All right? A lot of the workers are mistreated, and if you really take stock of what is going on in the industry, a lot of people, when they get in the industry, they do everything that they can to get out of that industry. Now, people talk about Barbados tourism being resilient and all of that. Well, this is what needs to happen if Barbados is truly to go back to tourism, and we truly are to be successful in tourism, so that it can benefit the young persons coming up, because we are on a show of the youth tonight. We have to make a new contract with these hotels and all of the ancillary services which provide to the tourism industry, and let them know that we cannot give you everything that you ask for, inclusive of financing, reduction in corporate taxes, no VAT. No, they basically want to get a free ride in Barbados, and you only want to spend a few shillings in Barbados to pay a few bus boys and waiters and certain people. And even when it comes to their senior management team, they're not taxed in Barbados in some hotels. Now, that in itself is not correct, and that is not how you build an industry. We have to recognize that the tourism industry must be an industry which truly benefits every man, woman, and child in Barbados. If you are asking every man, woman, and child in Barbados to contribute his taxpayers, his hard-earned money towards keeping that sector up and running. And until we, as a country, and more specifically the government, comes to an understanding that this is what must be done, we will forever continue, hold on, we will forever continue to spin top in mud. And persons in this country will find themselves only working harder and harder to let a few persons within that industry get rich. But in the grand scheme of things, the industry that should be benefiting us the most may be the very industry which is dragging us down. And I will agree with your viewpoint that we have to diversify within the industry or diversify from the sector if truly we are to benefit Barbados and all Barbadians economically.
Thank you. Kevin, I saw your hand raised. You wanted to
Yeah,
give a rebuttal
that's
before
a quick
Taylor
question
Prince?
because I mean I don't disagree with anything that the others would have said, but one thing that we always have to ask the question of Kimura would have made Stuart would have made reference to the ad in the newspaper from one restaurant for this what is it again, the some chief of food and beverage or deputy for food and beverage, and I think it is disgusting to start with. But the question is like, we could say that and we say it this way, but I don't think the chief immigration officer sits here to take our opinion before he accepts or rejects these applications. How many of us follow this up with the appropriate action of making sure that we write and make sure we protest the actions beneath the channels that are available to ensure that people understand that look at the talent we have here. Send them for training if you must, but look at the talent you have available here. I think we need to be able to be more we need to be not just speaking, because this is years. And I mean, I saw it this morning. I made a note to the others on the Gazette to say, we will write about this. We will write and send an objection because it is time that we stop talking about it in WhatsApp groups and on Facebook, and that we start writing. Because when we write, eventually they will be able to say, well, no, there are objections to this because there's suitably qualified people on this island. And even they're not necessarily expertise in the field, you tell them to right now, send them to France or wherever you need to send them to get the specific training that you're looking for and develop the human resources that are on this island. So we have to play our role too. We can't just talk about it. We gotta actually put our pens where our emotions are at.
Thank you. Tyler, let me get your views on the tourism.
Thanks, Kimar. Tourism, basically, we should not even use the word tourism. From my perspective, I would call it dependent. And as the guy said previously, this is a recreation of slavery. But in this time and era is a psychological slavery that is more in depth than ever. I know of a lot of businesses, especially in the West Coast and the South Coast too, as well, that has a lot of favoritism towards certain their partisan. I don't like to really talk much about this tourism department because it's nothing to speak about. We take land and we build houses, like if the houses can produce sustainable sustenance to keep us. We need to stretch our hands to where we were first, our Caribbean region, our Caribbean fellow brothers and sisters. And if we are too focused on Europe and these other countries, we are going to fall to a faith that is devastating, because we have zero natural resources. And I see other countries like Guyana and Trinidad and Jamaica that has a little sustainable resource, but yet it has a lot to do with the management. And if we have a government that claims that tourism is the key and is the way in which they push this agenda continuously, I personally believe that the integrity legislation should be passed, because I think money is being generated in all departments that contribute to the growth of this economy. But the problem is the management of the country is a lot to do with the management, because I would like to know that I'm working and I'm paying my taxes, and my taxes are being mismanaged. And it's, I mean, it's crazy. And given the fact that we are focusing so much, we have lost the sight on the youth of this country. We are still working with a chalk and talk system. The youth of this era is technologically advanced faster than you can even imagine. All we are creating is a new generation that's going to inherit a country's negligence of governance. towards the growth of the economy. And we need to move away, not completely, but too much focus on tourism. We need to have small businesses in this country associated with trading throughout the Caribbean region and create more infrastructure, more resources. And there is individuals abroad that's returning nationals, expressly from MIT, that is volunteering to come and teach the technological system and building drones and these things as well. We need to get our individuals who departed from this country because of the survival rather than living in this country, and have a sustainable country where the individuals are striving, not just favoritism, not just racism, not, I mean, we need equality and we need integrity. And I will continue to stress on this point that whether topic it is, I'm going to continue to stress on the fact that we are begging for the integrity legislation to be passed so that we can have accountability, and transparency, because I cannot have a country where the money is being allocated but mismanaged.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tyler. I want to move on to a very interesting topic, as we are young people as well, with the exception of Simon. But we want to move on to what you guys views are on education. We've heard many times we talk about the abolishment of 11 plus and a number of other areas like that. And so we want to look at that and see if that is still something that we can discuss and look discuss and see what is our views. I know that over time they had what we would call it, trouble in the land as it relates to young people and how what would have transpired in the CXC. I know Coffee Waller was on the show as he was talking about that issue that they would have faced. And also, as I said, we have a number of things that we've been calling for. Obviously, with education and the abolishment of the 11 plus, the government have been looking for way for smooth transition into that area. And so we would really like to see what are your guys' views. What you also think on the performance of the Minister of Education in her handling of the COVID situation, in the opening of schools as well. What do you think? Do you think we have reopened too soon? Do you think we should have given it till a later date? We would have also had the Barbados Workers Union president on the show as well when we spoke toward the reopening of schools. So I want to get your feedback. Let me start it from
Barbados Union of Teachers.
Beauty.
What is it? What is
They
that?
say Barbados Workers Union.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Beauty.
And so I would have seen that from that angle. So what I want to start with, I want to start with Simon, because Simon is a teacher, and then I want to go over to Stuart and get your views, and then come around from this angle as it relates to what are your views. I want, as guys, we wanted to zero in on this 33-year anniversary as well. So we want to hear what are your thoughts on how the minister have guided the ministry in the 3 years, and then also you can add your views and remarks in it, but also what you think of the performance in the Ministry of Education. I know Khalil, you raised your hand for a reason.
Let Khalil, if Khalil wants.
I know I've seen his hands up.
Yeah. I can go after Khalil.
There's a reason. Oh, I don't. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Simon, and then we go ahead. No, we go around.
All right, cool. Well, COVID, of course.
Put the mic closer.
Yeah. COVID, of course,
Simon, the headphones keeping your voice low and we could barely hear you.
Yeah, the phone was worse. Trust me, the phone was worse.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Let me see if it's any better. I can project. Any better here, guys?
Yes. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. I go a lot closer. My point really is that COVID-19 put a lot of disadvantage for teachers and students, in the sense that we've always had a system where there was face-to-face learning. And although some teachers would have done online classes and so on, those who would have been providing educational services outside the normal secondary school. The challenge is that everybody is not standardized when it comes to having the hardware. So one of the challenges that we had is at one point the Ministry of Education had to issue tablets, and we had a number of private sector companies as well as the school's alumni donating a number of tablets to students to use at home to assist in the whole transition towards e-learning or online instruction. Now, the other challenge with online instruction too is that with the situation with COVID, everybody was at home at one point. So it is hard for children to be in a controlled environment where they can concentrate and dedicate time to be working on their studies without interruption, either from a younger or older sibling or either from the parents or those persons in the extended family, the other people in the household. So so you had a challenge where students didn't have the hardware to do the work, whether a laptop or a tablet. And then there were issues also with connectivity. There's some students who said, yes, I got the laptop. Yes, I got the tablet. But the problem is, mommy ain't pay the internet bill, or we don't have internet at home. So there were some teething issues with
But
regards
did
to
it,
the
Simon,
online
not across you,
teaching.
but I think the flow would have came in and given free Wi-Fi to those
For
particular
those who have, right,
persons.
for those who
Yeah.
are signed up and so on to it,
Mm.
right? But nothing beats face-to-face teaching, and that's the honest truth. And teachers would say that to you. But the challenge that you had to is that in the uncertainty of the COVID environment, you had a situation now where even when you went back to schools, the class sizes are smaller, and then the whole issue of how you're teaching the syllabus and so on, and trying to reach students, you're doing both classes, physical classes, and then online. There was a bit of a disparity. So there were challenges all around.
Mm.
But I think the way forward now is to have classes where
Mm.
possible, and use the online platform as just a buffer to what you're doing in the classroom, because a lot of teachers were saying, well, look, my students were performing much better because they were well adjusted to being able to do the work at school. You can give a bit more attention, you can give a bit more expertise when you have children and they're submitting work and
Yeah,
they're there in front of you.
thank you, Simon. I seen a comment here from Wayne Hoyt saying some students still don't have tablets, and I just want to address this one here from my part. I think the problem is that when the government would have seen that we would have had to go to online classes, there was a number of philanthropic organizations that would have come together and started to give out tablets. But rather than we, there's not a limited a small number of people in schools. I think the last number was quoted was almost 75,000 children in school. And I would have loved to see, rather than saying the government and give everybody is greater, like one of those campaigns where
Donations.
everybody could have dropped in $100 to be able to help purchase and give every child, because the government could not carry the weight of every single burden as it relates to giving everyone a tablet, because at the same time you're still going through IMF program. It would have still been a big challenge coming off of that. It was not budgeted for. So I would have liked to see more of that, and people give rather than say, oh, everybody can get, but those that could afford put a $100 bill. Let me get you a key, Mark.
Yeah, as it relates to education, I yeah, like I said on previous shows before, since 1976, the in one Labour Party's manifestos, they were promising a changeover from the 11 plus system. But since then, we really didn't get much updates as to how the 11 plus system would change. I expected a more radical approach as it relates to the transitioning from that 11 plus system, but like I say, we did not get any updates as yet. I think the move to implement technology with the online learning was well intended, but the drawbacks, the pressure associated with online schooling, and students always being in the home, in the space with the parents. I think it was quite stressful for people in managing the online school. Quite a few parents were under stress as it relates to managing the online school and trying to help the students. And as you know, a lot of students go to extra lessons to catch up on work really with the fall back. So those luxuries were not available under the COVID period, and parents were feeling the pressure from the online school. The students are back into school. We had a difference in opinions from the BUT and the respective unions as it relates to the blended approach and the the face to face and the online. Like I said, online school worked for some and it didn't work for some, and face to face will work for some, and quite frankly, some will prefer the online.
Right.
As it relates to the performance of the minister, I keep hearing her keep making reference to a potential political opponent in St. Michael Southeast. So, which would have been the president of the BUT.
Mr. Pedro Shepherd, that is.
Yeah. She's constantly referring to him in her comments. So I guess I will look forward to see whatever happens in St. Michael Southeast when the general election calls between the two. But I think as it relates to education policy and how we go forward, I think the minister has a big role to play in shaping our country's education. Because as I said, there was a lot of fallout from the system, and I think persons will expecting better from the ministry. I won't say that the minister has failed, or I won't try to pull down, but like I saying, the expectations are really high as these are the nation's children, and we have to play a big role in that. As it relates to, but I can just finish on this point. As it relates to the continued investment in education, I appreciate the policy of paying for university fees. I don't know how much longer it's going to be kept in place, but I hope that the government can commit to keeping it in place, but to make some changes as it relates to, as I don't think that the government should subsidize all degrees, but some specialist degrees, which would equip some younger persons coming up to contribute to society in the future.
Okay, I saying there are many other institutions must be equipped to handle the 11 plus transition or whatever. Somebody want to know what is the number or the update in terms of how much people got tablet. I would say that at this point, I do not know that number. But again, if you're out there and you're inclined to give a person or your neighbor or somebody within your community, do so. One of the things that before we go on to the next person, what you could touch on in this thing when we talk about the stressfulness of having online teaching. Now I got 3 children, for some that don't know, and out of those 3, 2 of my children were on online school. And yes, it was a stressful. I'm not going to lie to you. It almost killed my wife, right? Better she than me, right? Because she was pushing all the online school. I'm not a school guy, so she was pushing all the online school. And I felt for the online. I felt for her at times sitting down there, not being able to do much because we have a 5-year-old that has to attend the school. But the good thing is that for me is that my child did not go back to school feeling left behind. You understand? He was able to still get his report cards. He was able to get his work, mommy helpy, and both of my child, both the big girl and the boy, was able to do their work. And yes, well, it was difficult. I was still happy that they were at home. They were still being educated, because then the conversation would be no. If the ministry didn't come up with online school, would be, we would not come up with something. We would not try to think. So while we're calling for one thing or the other, we could throw stone at it. On the other hand, I'm still glad as a parent of 2 children that they went to school, still being able to fit right back in and do exam. Well, it was a challenge, though I'm not going to dispute that. I'm just happy. And it also kept, for those who were home, it also kept some of the children, ordination children, off the road, out of blocks and at home, even though some did slip through the crack, but we can't always quarrel and bicker about those things. Some people will slip through the crack. Let me see if I can get Coffee Wallet in here, and then I go to Kevon, and then go over to Tyler and then Beckford. So Coffee Wallet, give me your 2-minute view on the education.
So much.
Sorry. Can you also, Coffee Wallet, if you can also, can you also give us, a 30-second update of the saga with the ministry, with the CXC?
Boy, Kimari, I hope that your watch is slow. Because, so a lot has taken place in education pre-COVID and since we've had the impact of the pandemic. And the Minister Santia Bradshaw came to the ministry, and she came with the Barbados Labour Party's manifesto that had a bold, progressive manifesto of reform in education. And she immediately confronted basic issues that had to do with the maintenance, something as simple as the maintenance of the school plans. So that the government would have been elected in May, the end of May, and immediately through the summer, she was faced with the situation of having to expand the summer renovation program, which she did, and allow a lot more schools to be captured by that particular program in terms of capital works in the schools. Immediately out of the gates, what did she do? And what did the government do? Reintroduce the payment of tuition fees? And once again, that's why when I hear people say that the government has not done or is not doing things for working class people in this country, it makes me scratch my head and wonder, because ultimately the individuals who have benefited most from the payment of tuition fees at the University of West Indies by the government of Barbados has been working class people who otherwise, and certainly under the Democratic Labour Party, would not have been able to attend university. You have an appreciation for the conditions that you have to work in terms of the school meals department and the improvements that have happened and are happening there. The government has said, and the minister has said, that we need to open new frontiers. So we need to look not only at abolishing the 11 plus or looking again at how we transition from primary to secondary, but we need to look at a lot more things. We need to look at things like robotics and coding, and you've seen that that's coming on stream very soon. And you have now the education, an entire education reform unit in the ministry, led by a chief education reform officer. And so you can see that there is a tangible commitment in the first instance to students and teachers who ultimately will benefit from the upgrades to the plants that have taken place and will continue to take place. And ultimately the country will be the richer for it in terms of the undertaking in terms of education reform. The fact of the matter is that whether you like it or not, what happened in terms of online learning, or perhaps more appropriately remote teaching, was not because we chose to do it. And we were in a situation where we had to, and we made the best of the situation. And I just want to point out that I have read about California and the situation there in terms of students being able to access online education, and the fact that large portions of their student population do not have devices, and teachers have not seen a significant number of those students since the beginning of the pandemic. And California, I think, has, the point of the matter is around 50 million people, I believe. The GDP of California is significantly larger than that of Barbados. And the Barbados government undertook to provide each and every child with devices. And I have no doubt that there are students still who don't have devices. And that is for a number of reasons, but it is not because the government of Barbados did not try to deliver as many devices and the aids to education, connectivity, those kinds of things to the students. And so you have this strand that runs through the entire minister's tenure in education. It's been a difficult run for her, but at every juncture she has I think put the interests of students first in what she has done. You asked about the CXC, and I guess in 5 seconds I have now, you would have seen the press conference today. It's not really an issue to discuss right now, but you would have seen the press conference today. There is a certain level of inflexibility there that needs to be addressed in terms of how we approach things in this region generally, but specifically for the exams. There was inflexibility, there was intransigence, and there has not been an attempt to put the interests of students at the forefront of what is happening. At the same time, again, the minister has been vocal at that level in terms of advocating for the best interests of those students.
Thank you very much. What it is I can say though, from getting reports, especially of the minister, I hear she fights hard, she's strong in getting a lot of things done. and pushing things. Well, you may have certain things that will not be able to pass, or we will have a little battle here and there to get it done. I do, from the reports, do know that she is for a force to be reckoned with as it relates to pushing for her children, or for the nation children rather, to be able to be to get what they deserve out of all of this. So it's good that the minister is fighting at the front for you guys in the CXC saga. And I do hope you guys come out successful on top of that. I go to Kevon, and then I want to go to Tyler and Beckford.
Yeah, Khalil pretty much grasped a lot of what happened and what occurred in education. I mean, let's be fair, we have to be understanding that anything transformational is going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be smooth. And that's the aim in the education sector currently. If you're looking to renew the method by which we enter secondary schools and how those secondary schools, as they have enunciated, are position, is going to be a little bit uncomfortable for some of us who may prefer things as they are, would prefer different structures. I know the ministry, the minister have expressed that the education transformation unit will be looking at the different models and things approach, and it will be a consultative process. So I think we look forward eagerly to see what comes out from there. But again, the whole education story is one, as Khalil would have outlined, one that would have been on the ground from day one. It's not just a matter of the experiences of online schooling and maybe going back into school, in a COVID environment, but we can speak to the fact that, as Khalil outlined, I think 75 schools would have benefited from plant refurbishments and improvements over 2 summers, I think 2018 and 2019. Last summer, again, when the students were out for prolonged period, we heard the Prime Minister said that some that needed a lot more to be done, they went back in and started to get some, use the time wisely and trying to improve the plant, make the environment conducive to learning and to teaching, so that all the stakeholders involved can at least be in a better place. He spoke to the university fees, he spoke which only extends into the placements at the BCC and the introduction of different degree programs there as well, making the access to those levels available and clearly more available to a wider range of people at any one point in time. The BCC does cater to technically more professional, vocational top areas, especially the degree in fine arts. You see one in nursing now. I think there are a couple others that they're exploring that would have been launched recently. I can't recall from the top. You see SJPI got additional backing to be able to advance the course for the technical and vocational training. And you see that across the different, this is the Barbados vocational training board. And education too, again, we keep speaking to how we try to do things across all the government. We see the introduction in the NTI, the National Training Initiative, that has now made the retraining and retooling through their relationships with the Coursera programs have been made available for free for people who may be out to work and looking to retrain and prepare themselves maybe into new areas. So again, there are a lot of different initiatives across education. It's a big ticket ministry. It's one that has transformation start all across it. So I think we just have to be, and it has disruption, particularly with COVID, that would have pretty much interrupted that progress. So we pretty much have to be pleased with where we are at right now. I think everybody involved would love to have been a lot further along, but in dealing with the hand that we have, I think we could be optimistic with what the future and the future outcomes over these next 24 months or so can bring. And I think the vision that has been espoused from education for the government of education should leave all of us optimistic that maybe less people will be left behind. The system where it's been failing people, we'll be able to help them be more included. And I guess is the small things we can do to make each other better. You would have spoken earlier, Kimura, about the technology and how some people didn't have access to some of the technology. And again, I think where we know these instances, I've heard people say to us, this body didn't have, and this body didn't get, the government and give them. And I'm asking, why are we asking the government to do it? Why, if I am in a better position, I can give you the $125 tablet instead of begging the government to do it. That's how we help each other out. If the person And Taylor speaks about the Chapman Lane and the St. Michael West area, and people who may, why if I got out and I'm in a better position, why not going back to help Marcy firstborn with his son? No, he might be struggling with it, so that at least the son be in a better position. So again, we got to keep encouraging each other to help, but we also got to realize that transformation is going to be uncomfortable, and hopefully it's our aim to get it right the first time, but we all know that change is a process, and we look forward eagerly that it will be for the benefit of everybody, and capture a lot of people that would have been excluded or be starting to feel excluded in the education arena.
Thank you. And that's why you made the plea earlier when Wayne asked the question. I think that we have to be responsible adults. Like none of my children went for a tablet, and the reason why is because they left it for persons that desperately needed it.
Yeah, we know there are people who could have and chose to depend on the mission as well, and that's part of our problem as people too. And so we got to be able to look out for each other better than that as well. So yeah.
Taylor, let me get your thoughts on the education.
Okay, so the educational system, to me, as many will know that I associate myself with, the westernized system is failing. It has failed me, and I'm a product of success out of it. And the educational system creates itself, then it recreates itself and recreates itself. And between those transitioning process in life, it changes based on your retainers. So looking at the educational department now, from when I was growing up, I was told that I was uneducated, retarded, keeping back the children and stuff. So go to the back of the class. But it's just that I learned differently. And they never knew that, because we had teachers in those times that just in love with the money rather yes, rather than the understanding. So we have teachers that are in love with just getting paid and teach from a curriculum, and that is it. The job is done. And being a youth growing up in 6 months in St. Peter, my interest, because of the neglect of the others in the educational department, I turned to the block and turned to the streets, because that's common sense that taught me, and I'm happy that I did. So the educational system has recreated itself at this present moment, where we have an issue with not just when I was going to school, go to the back of the class. Now we have who has money will have education now. Who has friends and associates, basically favoritism to an extent. So if you cannot get in tune with internet or a tablet, it'll be very difficult for your child to actually learn. And given the fact that the crime in this country by the youth is by single parent home, broken homes, and the community-oriented structure is needed, but is no longer there. So if we used to talk about education, we have to talk about education from an integrity perspective, not favoritism. Because I've seen systems where people run Comorians, Harazonians, and I can go on. And my discussion that I'm having and my statements that I'm making is not me up in the clouds sitting and getting reports from an intellectual level as to what's actually happening on the ground. It's me actually living it, because I see youth every single day, at least 50 to 60 youth a day I see on a continuous basis. And after I finish work, I will go to the streets and I would sit and I would spend time with some families and stuff, because of the trouble that they're going through. And they are going through a lot when it comes to the parenting factor, given the survival rate that we are living at this present moment. And how could the government pay more emphasis on just a small amount of individuals rather than holistically? So my thing is that the educational system is failing, and how long we do not technologically catch up, the generation will continue to step in stages where we will have the lower class, the middle class and the upper class. And if this authoritarianism continues, we are going to have the low class and the upper class. And it's all based on intellectualism. It's all structured and based on entitlement and a certificate. There are people who does not have the academias, but they make a lot more money in reality and in life itself. So given everything that's been said from everyone's perspective, I understand that I am actually in a classroom just the students just discuss stuff. And no disrespect to anyone. This is just me. I am unapologetic and I continue this way. So I'm not gonna give positiveness to something that I see is not worthy of positiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Jermaine, your 2 minutes, please.
Sure. So let me just start by saying that probably I'm not the best person to speak on education.
So do we just skip you and go ahead then?
No. My views will be heard at the best.
Well, you say you're not the best person, so.
All right. I want to use this quote. The master's tools cannot be used within the master's house. All right. Now, I personally think, and we were speaking about how the Barbados Labour Party performed in terms of education during this COVID pandemic and over the last 3 years. I think the first thing that we need to recognize is that successive ministers of education have often had to take blame for a lot of things. And I think it's quite unfortunate. I'll tell you the reason why. When you look at the education ministry and all of the ancillary agencies which are attached, and even you look at University of West Indies, the one thing that is predominant is that we have a lot of persons who love to tell you, like my friend Simon Ali, that they have a master's or that they got a doctorate or they got a bachelor's. So everybody can tell you about every qualification that they have. What they cannot tell you is how we are going to stop dealing with surface issues in terms of fixing buildings and providing tablets and those simple things, which are things that you have to do if you want the students to actually go to school, right? And deal with the underlying problems within the education sector. Now, I'm going to say something here that's going to make me a little bit unpopular, but I don't care.
You're already unpopular.
A lot of our schools are breeding grounds for prison. All right? A lot of our students are ignored by teachers. What the guy named Tyler, he was absolutely correct that there are some teachers, when they don't know how to deal with you, they just take you and stick you in the back or stick you outside. That's not teaching the student, right? Now, in terms of what the government of Barbados could do and how the Barbados Labour Party government has handled the situation thus far, I think and this is one area that I would say that the Barbados Labour Party government in this sense have just continued from where every other government has left off, and we just continued from there. But if we want to have a real revolution in education, you see something like the CXE, we were in 1976. They said we were going to, not CXE, common entrance, we said we were going to get rid of that in 1976. And in 2020, we said also we were going to get rid of it. I want the day to come where we stop saying what we're going to do and just do what we have to do. Because at the end of the day, that is the only way that change comes. One of the biggest challenges, as I said, that we have a lot of people who are in these ministries, and I think that is the whole travesty of the situation, where ministers are forced to take blame for the failings of civil servants who get paid on a monthly basis, but because they want to stick script and letter to a contract, they determine that they're not going to actually bring ideas, one, bring ideas to the table, and two, implement meaningful change. The reality is, if we want to help our children and helping and changing, revamping and changing the education system in Barbados will actually redound to the benefit of every man.
Jermaine, what ideas a civil servant could bring to the Ministry of Education?
What ideas a civil servant who, and remember I mentioned the point that a lot of them tell you about how many masters they have and all that, right? Instead of coming into a meeting and saying what you think the minister wants to hear to make them happy, say what you actually want to say, put it on the table and say, listen, we can, say as simple as you see at the common entrance exam. This exam is failing our students. You know what? Probably we should try a different system, promote our students based on merit, and see how that works. You come to, you go into classrooms, you look at students who are not
20 seconds.
Okay, now hold on. You look at students who are not performing academically. You say to yourself, look, these students are not performing academically because probably they're just not into all the theoretical stuff. Let us streamline these students and put them where they truly want to be so that they can hone whatever skills they have. Because I'll say this to you, I want to say this in my last 10 seconds. A lot of people whom we neglect in the classrooms and we allow to fall by the wayside, some of them end up in Her Majesty's prisons dots. And a lot of men can tell you, well, you know, when I went out there, I went and learned plumbing, I learned masonry, I learned art, I did all sorts of things out there. But you want to be honest, true? If we had just invested that time in that child and that person when they were a child, from young, and let them hone in on those skills from in school, instead of possibly being involved in criminal activity and being led astray, they possibly would have gone a different path. You know, because every smart person doesn't have to be able to read Shakespeare. They just have to be able to be good in what they are good in specifically. So that is all I will say on education.
Okay, Kevin.
What your man is saying sounds. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I just said what Jermaine said just now. I'm not sure the direction that he was going, but I mean, if you're saying from what you said that the system has failed people because the teacher wasn't adequate, if we change the system with, per se, teachers that still may not be adequate, then you're not liable to have the same result. I would be not want to then promote a system that speaks to training and facilitating the people who administer the education to ensure that students, regardless of whatever system you use, don't get left behind, that they can facilitate them. Because changing the system without changing what you've both identified as a root cause is not going to provide a different result. So it ultimately comes back down when the Prime Minister spoke to the ability to reward people with different levels and particularly teachers, and try to incentivize people to take the job and the work more seriously rather than system A, system B, system C. Because if you don't, you're going to end up at the same place with people clocking paychecks, if that's really the problem based on what you've both identified.
Right. Taylor, let me get
I would
Taylor.
just like to.
Oh, go ahead, Taylor. Sorry.
So I would just want to touch on a fact that was said. We need to understand that we live in a democracy that has risen to authoritarian government that soon, hopefully not that a dictatorship.
Listen, I feel like, I'm sorry, but this again, not the
There's no authoritarian government thing
is not
so
true.
I cannot speak.
It's not true. You can, but you are in a public forum and it's like almost Trumpian to keep projecting things that aren't true. This authoritarian, you repeat it. It is not true. We do not have an authoritarian style of government. We do not have a dictatorial prime minister. We do not have it. We don't have it in the Dems. We don't have it now. We never did. It's not who we are. It's not saying that.
All right, I want to ask you both a question.
Let me get Taylor to finish.
So I cannot finish.
Go ahead, Taylor. I give you 30 seconds to
Finish,
finish.
but that's not fact.
Okay, go ahead, Taylor.
I am not in the debate. I deal with facts. I deal with life itself. I came from the ghetto, so I deal with life itself. So I'm not going to get in an intellectual argument about the meaning of a word and why I use it in the context in which I do, because reality is reality. So if you're up here and I'm down here,
I come from a village, my grandmother cut kids, the other one clean toilets. We don't have a
so-
authoritarian government.
Right.
So
Let's see here.
to understand the word, the meaning politics from the foundation is basically to pilot or to steer or to control the mind. So when we look at certain schools that the electing boards and the political affiliations, you can tell the position in which they're given. And if we have teachers being elected from a body of people based on your partisan political association, I don't think we will have love for what we do, but love in terms of finance. Thank you.
Let me just correct that for someone who sits on a school board, that teachers are not selected based on their political affiliation. They have to go through a tendering process, just like anyone. If a position is available, the teacher can apply for the position, and that also includes a teacher from within the school that is already
Correct.
that is already there. So if there's a math position and there's a junior, let's say there's a position for a senior math teacher, and then there's a teacher, there's several math teachers within the school already, they all can apply for the position. And once the position is applied for, then the board would then recommend to the ministry, based after interview process, if these persons are eligible. But it also goes to tender, which means it hits the paper, and those on the outside can also a tender for the position as well. So I can clearly say that boards, while we are selected by the minister, we do not run as a political whatever, a while out there, politically while out there, or whatever, or select people because use a DRB. The process is a fair one, and the board makes recommendation to the ministry, and the ministry is the one that makes the final decision on if 1, 2, or 3 is selected. So we have no boards don't have any decision in the final decision making of a person becoming a teacher or not. So there's no political interference there, I would say, to that extent. And I do serve on a board with persons that have that are from different political party, and they also include union reps and PTA teachers. So it's a very balanced board, as I would say, in that regard. Just to cover that in. Kofti Waller, you wanted to make a point before we just go to the last point before we close off.
Yeah, just in relation to something that much actually of what Jermaine was saying. For quite a bit of it, I felt like he was reading from the Barbados Little Party's manifesto. In terms of the agenda for the bold and progressive reform of education, in terms of master teacher status, to ensure that we get the right people staying in education and the right people in the Ministry of Education, in terms of the transition from primary to secondary school, all of those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, I think he said something about as simple as the 11 plus. And the fact of the matter is, it's not simple at all. So that we can all want to say that we're going to abolish 11 plus because it has not served us, or it has served us a purpose, but it is not fit for purpose at this point in time. And the fact of the matter is that you can't repeal and replace with what, and that is a complicated process. And the government has been in power now for 3 years. And the type of education reform that we're talking about are the things that is a process that can last up to a decade or more. And that is an important context. And we've had COVID that has intervened now. And nonetheless, I think that we have heard that they are still committed to reforming the common entrance process.
Okay, thank you. Wayne, just to answer your question, primary school and secondary, you asked your primary school, secondary, are teachers hired differently? Both, yes, the board of directors, board of management for secondary school, all schools, secondary school has a board of management, and they are the ones that interview and make the recommendation to the ministry. In the primary schools, those persons would have to go directly to the ministry because primary school does not have a board. They have to go through the chief education officer, or there is a chief, there's a, we call it now, officer in charge of primary school. I can't remember how you call them. But they're one over the primary and one over the secondary. But the chief, you go to the chief education. Pardon, we call him?
You mean like an education officer? That's what you
mean? But in charge of primary or education officer. Right, so, right. So just to understand that, and I think that is where a lot of times we fall down because we don't take time to find the knowledge surrounding these things. And then when we can speak about things and then think that it's, you know, when you may blame the minister at times for things that the ministers clearly don't have control over. And many times we point the fingers directly at ministers because they govern the ministry, but most time they're governing the policy of the ministry and not necessarily
ministers become victims of a system.
Correct. They are victim of a system because if it's not big programs such as, you know, for example, we could take the Ministry of Youth when Adrian Ford started the block program. Well, it is the minister's idea. the minister doesn't sign checks or making it happen. That has to be the public service now that makes that particular project happen. So we have to understand how the system works, how everything process and stuff like that. Well, we wind down, I have to take note that Kevon is about to leave us, and we are going to wind down pretty soon because we've been going at a number of topics, and someone is saying here that we need to actually have more shows with the youth perspective, and we can take that into consideration for sure, that the debrief team can look at having probably a day.
You don't want me because I'm too old, that's what you're saying?
I definitely what I'm saying. Definitely what I'm saying, and the viewers are saying as well.
Party, you know.
I was 40 in December. I look like 20. I look like 28.
You look, but you ain't feel the way, so you still got road you. But so we could look at that. But those are some of the major things. I think that there's a number of topics that we can hit at again, but we always have to leave more for people to desire. But one of the things I would like to touch on before I go, because we never get this part, is the youth perspective on the upcoming election. And I will leave the other things so we can come back to it. Like we can look at sports next, we can look at culture next, we can look at a number of other issues and a number of other ministries and a separate program. But it will be keen, and I will give Kevon it just before he has to leave. What are your viewpoints on the election? And I want to spin it from this angle in terms of your views as well as youth involvement more in the running of election, because I know that on the Barbados Labour Party side, there are members that people are throwing around saying they may leave. On top of that as well, the DLP, I have not seen them I've not seen from what the list that was thrown out and pulled back much young candidates, and also from the other parties like PDP. I don't think they have any young previous UPP. We haven't heard anything about them. And then Tyler was talking about them as well. What is your view? And also youth involvement in politics, in elective politics, because we all talk politics, but doesn't mean we're a politician, but elective politics. I'll let you go so that as well you can give your close off. And so if you have to exit, you can exit with your points. Go ahead.
So I try to understand what you're asking. Trying to ask what is our view,
what is your view on politics, but also on the upcoming election, but also what is your views on youth involvement in elective politics and what basically going forward in this upcoming election as well?
Well, that's that could be a semi-loaded question. To be very fair, the party has a structure by which people become candidates, but being a candidate is pretty much just a top of a ticket per se, but it takes a whole lot to ensure that you knit communities together, you understand what happened. I don't think we've done really a manifesto based on what we sit down, we feel is really a process that the last manifesto was pretty much 3-4 years worth of work, going into different communities, speaking to different focus groups, coming up with first set of ideas and then working back with them. And that process is one that the others in our West would always hear me say, we have to make sure that we put in our energy where we are. People will come out and say elections, their voice, and elections take work. And if you don't put in the work from now, then ultimately you don't just wake up the day the Prime Minister calls an election and then determine that's where you want to be. Same way it is to being a candidate, ultimately, it takes work at learning your constituents, learning the needs, learning what it is that they want you to represent them for. And sometimes you got to always remind people who have interest in politics that it has to be people first and foremost. You have to be able to represent people and advance the causes that are dear to them. And obviously leadership is that sometimes you may have a cause they did not even know that they might be interested in, that you could share with them and they may endorse you for that. But the party has a pretty much set process on candidate selection. And if there were, we have 29 MPs currently, but we have 30. We have the one candidacy that was available that was filled already, got Chris Gibbs as the caretaker in St. Michael West. If other people for some reason or not choose not to run in the next general election, as is their right, then the party has a process by which people can express interest, and the branches then they would engage the branch and will seek the nomination via the branch, and that usually comes back to the National Council for ratification. So again, anybody young or old is ready to get on the ground. If a vacancy were to occur at this stage, to get into the ground and do the work and go through the process with the branches. 99% of the time, if a branch nominates you at the voting, it's pretty much a process of ratification at the NC level. So it's a pretty open and democratic process. So if you or Khalil or whoever, it could be once you meet the legal requirement of age, and you have something to offer, and people.
But what is also your views on the upcoming election in terms of what is basically you could put it into youth participation or general? What is your views?
I think the thing is,
how do you think the party stands as well going in? Another chance to become re-elected?
Is that we're gonna, before we had a manifesto to run on and really promising people that would be different. As it stands today, if the election were tomorrow, we have a solid record that we could run on of saying promises made, promises kept. I mean, if you go through any of our manifestos and we sit down and it's here and you go through it project after project, there's things that have been addressed. Is there more that we can do? Of course, but ultimately we're gonna have a report card that we can run on. And as it stands today, we are pretty much through a lot of that. COVID has come and we put in a lot of things there that weren't on the script. There's some things you have to deviate from, but it's to be able to keep that. But most importantly is the record of being, I guess, transparent. We've seen a lot of times that we've made decisions that people would have expressed certain views on, and we've not been afraid to step back and say, well, we could review and we could look for it. And I think that's probably the most endearing thing for any young person, because I mean, growing up, you always say, if you make a mistake, go and come again. And I think that's one of the things that the Prime Minister always say, we're not gonna get it right all the time. They're not gonna get it right all the time. But when we don't, be able to review and come back again. So the election could be tomorrow, the election could be in 24 months. We know we're gonna have a record to run on. We're gonna be able to say to you, we promised this, we did this. Buses, garbage, sewage, education, we could go through to welfare, and then you're going into the health and the hospital, housing projects, roads. I think we did something like 58 roads already, and we got another 53 to go in the east of the country, in the Scotland district. So that's it. It's going to be a record to run on, and that's going to be the most important thing.
Thank you very much. If you have to leave, thank you for being with us. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. It was good. Glad to see all you guys again, Taylor. It was good interacting and being here. So I'll log up when it's my time to go.
No problem. Thank you. Kimar, let me get your
Kevon. Good night.
Let me get your feedback there, Kimar Stewart, on the youth perspective in the politics, and what do you think? And if you think that the Barbados Labour Party or the Democratic Labour Party, any other party has a chance going in the next election, and would you like to see more youth participation?
Yeah, I'm gonna address that point, but first I wanted to make a comment current to the banter that I heard between Tyler and Kevon about the word dictatorship. I will make a comment from the perspective that there's some quarters of the country who believes that Barbados is heading in that direction. There were some articles in the newspaper speaking to the powers that were concentrated into the hands of the Prime Minister under the state of emergency legislation, which is still in place right now. If you read the legislation, you will see that cabinet vested powers into the office of the Prime Minister to be able to effect specific actions. And persons were issuing worries that legislation like that could be trending towards the dictatorship. So I understand where Taylor's coming from, and I understand where Kevon is coming from in terms of the pushback, but it's still that perception up there. I think
many D's for that perception.
Well, it didn't come from the D's. This was a general public concern, so you can't attribute it to the DLP.
Is this a statement I wrote?
Most of the writers and the newspapers I wrote that speak to it are known actors. So I mean, it's a good narrative to develop, but we can't. I think it's something that we gotta be able to discourage people. We can. I think I acknowledge that the emergency legislation, for necessary reasons, did what it did. But to try, I think it's still important that we don't. We in the arena have a responsibility to, when people express specific concerns, to explain and to share, and make sure that it is that we could guide conversations where necessary. We can't necessarily, for experience, just use it to amplify. So that's been my major concern with the use of the word all the time. Yeah. I'm not gonna doubt that people have concerns, but we have to be careful not to let certain things get too far ahead.
I think it's even if people have concerns, we think the narrative of the stories tend to give people more of a scare tactic than, because I don't see that how putting powers into the prime minister hand to control this pandemic, which I think, in my personal opinion, a great job has been done. It speaks to dictatorship, or in essence, I just think that is something that the writers wanted to write on, and they wanted to create a narrative.
Interject quick too, Kimar.
Pull out the mic, Simon.
Yeah, that's
pull the mic closer to you.
Sorry. The strength of government also speaks to two things: the will of the people and the weakness of the opposition. If the opposition parties are weak, the people will vote for the government. They will vote for the party that they believe will be the best government. All right. Yeah, I think it's as simple as that. If a party, if the Barbados Labour Party presents itself as the best alternative or the best option for Barbados,
before the dictatorship issue, you vote for them.
There's no other party that can rival that and say, well, no, we have a better perspective, or we can do something better. Obviously, the people will vote according to how they feel about the political parties. That's
a famous quote was made, and I quote, she said, if the lie get a head start, the truth got hell to catch up with it.
Which is a lie.
And in reality, as I said, and I will continue to say, I am unapologetic. And there's two worlds occurring right now. And if the truth continue to run, if the lie continue to run in representation of the truth is going to come and catch it. Because we're seeing the violence, we're seeing the crime, we're seeing what's occurring, because it's frustration, it's too much. And to understand the aspect of what is occurring in this country, who feels it? And as I say continuously, as I say continuously, this is not me being advised what is occurring. This is me actually seeing hundreds of people when the month come. This is not me sitting and having a discussion. This is me listening to people, listening to youngsters. So what I teach them not to be groceries in a supermarket. You're not to be bought. I teach them either love me or fear me. At the end of the day, you will respect me. The common denominator is respect. And when aspired politicians and people in higher class society comes to the ghetto, comes to the block, dressed in a sophisticated manner, it speaks down to an individual when you open your mouth. And then if we are greeting you with respect and you just come in to belittle us, I'm going to return and retaliate as well, and let's see who's going to win. But so we need to be realistic.
Fellas, I mean, I didn't mean for the convo to drift so far. So far left.
Sorry.
Go back on. Yeah, go back on.
Yeah, but like I said, the trend line, and that leads me on to another point in that, and I can touch Simon here, that Simon believes that the prime minister is most powerful right now, a top of her game and the like.
I think the prime minister is doing the job she's supposed to do.
But come on, Simon, don't back off now, because you were on the show more than once, attempting the prime minister chest. So don't back down now.
Right,
so,
the reality is that show me another leader that
but that can't no. You can't say it, but you can't try to interject about being. You can't try to interject that factor because
show me another leader that has the regional influence, the international influence that our prime minister currently has.
But that's not the point. But that's not the point, Simon. The point is, right? and I started back from the trend line on Taylor's point, is that there are persons, people in the across Barbados that saying that yes, the prime minister is strong, but the prime minister has been, I mean, she started to relax now, but she has been at the forefront of everything. The prime minister has been head and shoulders
Every
above.
other leader does. We
But
had the
that's not the
conversation,
point.
sure.
That's not the
We had the
point. But don't
conversation
take away from
What
what's
is this?
happening now.
That's a response. That's a response to what happened before. People had an issue with absenteeism at leadership.
Right.
People are
But
letting people
sure.
respond and selected what they want. I know it's
No, the point that I really trying to make is that
Go ahead,
persons
go ahead,
are saying,
Kumar.
right,
Go
right.
on here,
The
Kimar.
point I'm making is that persons are saying yes, the prime minister, yes, the prime minister. But and the dangerous thing that Simon keeps saying is that there are no other persons who are eligible to be seen as strong or the like. And the fact is that there are other MPs.
That's not what he said. That's not what he said.
That's not what I
He's
said.
talking from a party perspective that there are no other leader within the parties that have shown that they can come close to what May Motley has to offer, and that is a
all I'm
fact.
saying.
Can I interject here? Can I interject? Because we all seem to be thinking. Look, let me make this point. The last time that the Democratic Labour Party even came close to understanding young people in this country was in 2008. Right? No, Kimar, let's be fair.
But we're gonna carry the conversation back on there.
All right, Kevin.
Hear me. 2008.
All right.
Right? Between 2008.
Thanks, Kevin.
Right. Between 2008 and 2018, the Democratic Labour Party, well, no, 2009 and 2018, the Democratic Labour Party spent their time cursing every young person and everybody that they could find in this country. Brandon Short, as the Prime Minister of this country, ignored the persons of the citizens of this country. And in doing that,
so trying to get back to bring up the conversation about the games irrelevant. The point that I am trying to make to you.
All right, let me hear, Jeremy, let me hear your point. Let me hear, finish your point there, thing, so we can wrap up in about 10 minutes.
Okay, let me just finish quickly.
Wait. 30 seconds.
Maybe?
Let me hear Kimar. I just wanted Kimar to finish so we can start cutting. Go ahead, Kimar.
The point I'm trying to make, right, is that you're mostly seeing the prime minister up front in every situation. And to prove my point is just go down to the last fish market that was open in the constituency in St. Michael Northwest, where you had Nero, you had Kurt, and you had the prime minister. My thing is, honestly, this is not my opinion. This is the opinion of the public when they're saying that the other MPs are not getting a chance to prove their mettle, not getting a chance to shine. So people are saying that they're not even seeing the MPs in the constituency. When you put, if you want to put ratings on it, people will endorse the prime minister. Yes, that's great. We clap. But when it comes to individual MPs, the rating is not so high, and person is miles off. So what I'm saying to you is that the MPs, some MPs are not pulling the weight and they're not pulling the load in terms of performance, and you need to be allowed to do it. But I can't ask a prime minister. What remains is that the public is getting uncomfortable with the prime minister being up in the front of everything and others not getting an opportunity to shine.
I don't think that the public.
I want to bring a retort.
But hold on, let me just see.
Right?
I just want to hold on.
I want to bring a retort. Kimar, you.
All right, 30 seconds.
The Democratic Party is complaining about the fact that Ms. Motley is opening buildings which have been rebuilt. All right. Different schools
on buildings
and changing the name of the sign from Frederick Smith, not from St. James Secondary to Frederick Smith. That is not progress. So you know what? If my prime minister is going to be blamed for doing work in terms of building fish markets, polyclinics, new structures and new systems in place, guilty as charged, but she's doing her work, and that's what's important. And in terms of you saying that the MPs are not getting a chance to do what they have to do,
I think
in fact that she is very has a dominating personality, but the reality is that having a dominating personality, she is leading this country from the forefront, and she's doing her job, what she was actually elected to do. I would rather that any day than Freundel, Jerome, Stewart, and zero leadership.
All right, let me hear Coffee Waller. You got anything to bring
Again,
up
you
this
missed the
comment?
point, Jeremy.
All right, hold on.
Again,
Let me get Coffee Waller. Hold on, guys. Yeah, Coffee
Well,
Waller. You have
Sorry,
anything?
Khalil. Sorry, Khalil.
I
We
wouldn't,
apologize.
I wouldn't expect a current member of the Democratic Labour Party to understand this. But the Democratic Labour Party, prime ministers are elected to lead. Leaders are elected to lead. And that is what the prime minister has done, and that is what the prime minister continues to do. She leads. And at every juncture she leads. And at the same time, leaders understand that they can't do everything. And the prime minister has Ryan Strong and Marsha Cadle in her own ministry, and the two of them,
John King as well.
Well, John King, and now in the Prime Minister's office. Ryan Strong did a lot in terms of leading the budget process. The estimates process. I'm sorry, Marsha Cadle has been the quarterback, as they say in America, for investment. You have
Senator McConney, K. McConney doing good work.
In MIST, you have William
Sadler doing good work in the Ministry of Youth.
You have William Duguid at the Ministry of Transport and Works.
But the question to Coffee Waller, if I may add, is we all asking for to see ministers, but I can think that we don't understand what we are asking for. You're asking for work to be done. But then at the same time, you're saying you want PR out of the ministries. Or the ministry.
And that's why I can never understand, because people, there are some people, the Democratic Labour Party particularly, that the Barbados Labour Party is all PR and all of that jazz. And so that if the Prime Minister is seen too much, they may say that one or two ministers, they're seen too much and they're too much in front of the cameras, and why don't they get behind the desk and do some work? And then you have ministers who are quietly going about their job, doing what they're supposed to do. And you say we don't see them. Ian Gooding-Edge is a perfect example of that. We don't see them. We don't, what is he doing? So that I have come to realize that, well, they can't please everybody. It certainly can't please the Democratic. The government must therefore look then to serve the best interests of the people of the country, and not some of these phantom people that Kimar are talking about. In terms of Kimar is talking about, who have some of these